And we have a conversation next with our folks from the Indiana Junior High School, and in this case from the senior high as well. So let me conference them together on the air this morning, and we should have Mike Minnick, the principal with the Indiana Junior High, and Doug Johnson from the senior high on the air. Gentlemen, good morning.
Good morning, Todd.
Good morning.
It's good to have you both on the air with us here today. And again, our conversation brought to you by Marcus & Mack, a law firm representing injured people. Well, Mike Minnick, let's start with you this morning and talk about the BOTVIN. What is the BOTVIN life skills training? What is that all about?
Sure. First of all, thanks for having us on today. It's a great opportunity to promote some of the things that are happening at the junior high. Well, the general program overview for BOTVIN life skills training is that it is a substance abuse and violence prevention program. It's based on 35 years of scientific research. It's proven to be the most effective evidence-based program used in schools today. And the life skills training it's a comprehensive, dynamic, and developmentally appropriate program to promote mental health and positive youth development for students from grades 6 through 9.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And especially in this environment, when you don't physically have contact with the students, I would guess it has a little bit of added importance that the message gets through to them.
It totally does. Given the circumstances of the distance learning model that we're practicing right now, the learning objectives that this program really hones in on are personal self-management and self-care skills, general social skills, and most notably in our current curriculum at the 6th grade level is resistance skills to use of tobacco, alcohol, and other drugs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, that's where I was going to go next, was let's define what some of those behaviors would be. And you just said it, use of tobacco, alcohol, and other drugs. It really covers the whole gamut.
Well, it does. This is a highly recognized and accomplished program. It's been recognized as an exemplary program by the U.S. Department of Education. It's considered top tier by the Coalition for Evidence-Based Policy, and it's a model program for blueprints for healthy youth development, focusing on substance abuse and just the typical at-risk behaviors of students that we have at the junior high is where we're tailoring it to our needs.
Mm-hmm.
And when kids are, at home and there's downtime and looking for some sort of guidance, a program like this hones in on the very essence of self-care for all people, but especially at this vulnerable age.
Yeah. I want to talk about some of the specific techniques that we're talking about in just a couple of moments, but I want to bring Doug Johnson in a little bit. Doug, the Smokeless Saturday program, tell me about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So Smokeless Saturday is a half-day intensive diversionary program designed to help students understand the causes and draws of nicotine and tobacco uses. Now, that's pretty much straight from the website, but Smokeless Saturday is something that is kind of a win-win for both schools and students. And the reason for that is this. When a student gets in trouble or in school or caught with tobacco products, the law is pretty clear. There's, they get in trouble with school, but there's also a fine attached to that. And, that can start to range up to $150, $200. And that starts to get pretty burdensome on students. Now, I do agree it's nice to have a reason for students to stop smoking or chewing for that matter. But at the end of the day, if the students got to school and they've already done that, a fine may not be the diversion that they need. So what Smokeless Saturday does is it's an opportunity for students who may have gotten in trouble for having a tobacco product in school to take another option. And that option is to go to a one-time, Saturday-only, Saturday morning. They got to get up bright and early, and they go to one of a handful of different places. Those places would be Armstrong has it, but IRMC has it, which would be the closest one that's to our area. And what students will do is they'll go to a training, and it's a very informative practice. Students, have an opportunity to go to a place that kind of educates them and outside of school But the nicest thing about it is that students that agree to go to this program, and again, they have to agree to do it, that actually gets them out of the fine. And so rather than fining students, we actually have an opportunity to educate students. And honestly, it's been a pretty effective use. I've had a lot of positive reports from students that have went there, and it's been something that we've used at the high school for about a year now, and we plan to continue using it because it's been very effective.
Now, obviously, it's difficult to do that now because of all of the restrictions, but is it generally a program that is every Saturday or the Saturday a month, or how does it work?
Good question. Now, there's a schedule, and if students are willing to travel, they could pretty much find about any Saturday that it is that would work for them. Typically, IRMC has about one a month, and we try to schedule the students and the next one that's available. You hate to say, oh yeah, we'll get back to you 3 months from now. We try to find one that works best for students, though, because at the end of the day, our students are busy too, and those Saturdays are pretty valuable for them. So we try to work around their schedule, but we certainly, as far as finding a place in the schedule, if they're willing to travel, we can usually find them a date.
Yeah. Now, Mike and Doug, you can both take a shot at this one because vaping has become a really, really big topic in schools in the last couple of years. And nicotine is certainly a part of the whole vaping landscape. So let's talk about vaping and where it fits into this whole equation.
Well, I can jump in first if it's okay with you, Mr. Johnson.
Sure.
I want to acknowledge the reality that more and more kids are vaping than we ever had experienced kids smoking at this level. And that is to say, I think the perception and the accessibility of vaping devices for our youth is really a major barrier to kids' wellness. I think that the perception is that they're not as harmful, and they're certainly marketed in a way that attracts young people to it with the scents and the flavors. And let's face it, it's relatively new to the marketplace, and the long-term effects they're still figuring that out. So our approach to a vaping infraction at the school is very similar to that of a tobacco infraction, and in fact, in this past few months, state legislature has finally approved that we can treat it as such with the way we handle it, and we're very fortunate that we have a wonderful partnership. I want to give a plug to our local judicial system, because we have wonderful magistrate in Indiana, and the judicial system beyond it with our judges. They're very supportive of making these teachable moments when it's at all possible. Our approach is not to hurt kids when we have to discipline with a vaping device. Our approach is really to help them learn the dangers and to take an educational approach, a teaching and learning approach to these behaviors when they find themselves in the school. And the BOTVIN allows us to do that in the school setting, and the Smokeless Saturdays allows us to do it as a caveat outside of the school setting. And we actually use that as part of our approach. Both vehicles are used to support students' wellness and learning when we have kids at the junior high violate these rules.
Now, that's the junior high, and you're dealing with younger students, a little bit more mature student at the senior high. Doug, is it any different in terms of the way that you approach it at the senior high?
Well, I think Mike brings up a great point, is that, vaping is so much more accessible than I think that, cigarettes would have ever been. And the biggest reason for that, I think, is just the lingering smell that's afterwards. If somebody were to smoke a cigarette in the bathroom, it's not very hard to figure out who did it and when by just, looking at their cameras and figuring it out. But when it comes to vaping, it's a little bit more difficult, to know when and where and how and with what device. And there's a lot more to it than just that. And I do agree with what Mike said about the laws have changed a little bit in that, that vapes are now moving into the 2020-2021 school year. vapes are now included basically under the same category that tobacco would have been. And that means that, when a student is vaping in school, that some of those applicable fines that applied to tobacco products now apply to vape products. Now, why that's significant is, we don't like to see our kids get fined for anything, and we don't really want to go that direction. So when it comes to Smokeless Saturday, one of the nicest things about vaping being added to that is before what would happen is when a student would get in trouble with tobacco, it made sense. There would be a punishment from the school side, but also from the legal side. We could reduce the punishment from the school side by over half and allow students to, we could handle that in-house, and then we could also remove the fine piece of it. So when students went to Smokeless Saturday, it made total sense. It was a win for everybody. Now, when it came to the vaping piece of it, yes, we still could reduce the school side of whatever the punishment would be for that infraction. But, having students then go to the Smokeless Saturday and, they're not really avoiding the fine. So part of that it just changed the dynamic of, the willingness for students to go to Smokeless Saturday. But now that vapes are included with tobacco on that, the process all of a sudden is the same thing. Students can reduce their fine, and what they can do is they can get educated on a subject that, to be honest, I don't think that kids know even necessarily what they're putting in their bodies when they see these vapes. And I think that's the scariest part is that, and Mike said it, it's so much more mainstream now, and I think that the way that it's just marketed to kids is, even the name itself, it's just vapor, how bad can it be? And I think that's the most dangerous part, and I think that's why the education piece of this is so significant, because, kids that start this now, who's to say where that's going to leave them, whether that's, if they switch to cigarettes at some point or whatever, or just keep vaping for whatever. Like Mike said, we don't know what the long-term effect is. So there's so many positives to being able to add this into the high school, because he's absolutely right. And we're not the only school that's dealing with vape issues, but this is a great way for our school to try to be more proactive than reactive by incorporating this into our building. And I know it's worked well for us at the high school, and from what it sounds like, and from what Mike told me, is it's had the same effect at the junior high.
Yeah, well, one of the things about it is that not only do the kids not know what they're inhaling, we don't know what's in that vape pen either. It can be any of a number of different substances. All of them are bad for kids. Mike Minnick, last word here this morning. The BotVin system, real quickly, how does it work from a practical standpoint with the kids not in school with you now? What are some of the techniques that are used?
Well, we do have an online component to it. So we're able to upload videos that have mini lessons, and those videos can focus on anything from self-image and self-improvement to decision-making, myths about smoking, biofeedback about smoking, like, for example, some of the physiological effects of smoking, myths and realities about alcohol consumption, marijuana, and other drugs. So these videos and online exercises give kids an opportunity to access the curriculum, and then through our Google Classroom, through our health and phys ed classes, the students are able to provide feedback to pointed questions about that content, quizzes, writing assignments, things of that nature, and with the various mechanisms of social media, whether it be emailing or doing a video group conference call, so to speak, we could have a discussion about it. These are all sort of examples of the ways kids can be engaged from the distance learning model, and some of the specific lessons that are tailored in our program at the junior high.
Mike Minnick, Doug Johnson, it's a good conversation. I'm glad we were able to have it this morning. Thanks for being with us.
Really appreciate the time, Mr. Marino. Thank you.
All right. Both have a great day, okay?
You do the same.